You know, at 56 years old, I thought I'd experienced enough of life, including things and people who simply weren't worth my time.
If you've ever felt dismissed, diminished, or disrespected, despite everything you've given, despite all you've accomplished, please stay with me. This story is for you, because at the end of the day, we all deserve to be treated with dignity. And sometimes we need to be reminded that it's okay to walk away from those who can't see our worth. The first was David, my colleague at Henderson and Associates, where I'd worked in project management for nearly 18 years. David and I started around the same time, back in 2006. We were both young and eager then, well, younger anyway. I was 38. He was 42. We went through tough times together, late nights, finishing proposals, stressful client meetings, the whole 9 yards. I genuinely thought we were on the same team, you know. I thought after all those years working side by side, there was at least mutual respect between us. I worked hard, not to prove anything to anyone, but because that's how I was raised. My parents were ordinary civil servants who worked hard to build their lives from nothing. And they taught me that excellence wasn't optional. It was how you honored the opportunities you were given. So I stayed late when others went home. I volunteered for the difficult projects that everyone else avoided. I studied, I learned new systems. I took on responsibilities that weren't even in my job description. And I didn't broadcast it. I just did the work and let the results speak for themselves. And the results came. By 2019, I'd led 3 major projects that brought in over $15 million in revenue. I'd built relationships with clients that nobody else could crack. I'd mentored junior staff who went on to become top performers. In 2021, I was promoted to senior project director. It wasn't luck. It wasn't favoritism. It was 18 years of consistent, excellent work. But David had a different story to tell. I remember the day I overheard him in the break room. I'd just come back from a meeting where I'd been publicly recognized for landing a massive contract with a healthcare network, a client we'd been pursuing for 3 years. I was feeling good, you know, proud of myself. I walked past the break room and heard his voice. Margaret? Oh, she just got lucky, right place, right time. That healthcare deal? Anyone could have closed that. The client was ready to sign anyway. I stopped in my tracks. My heart just sank. Another voice, I think it was Tom from accounting, said, "Come on, man. She worked that account for years. I saw her presentations. They were incredible." David laughed. It was this dismissive, bitter laugh that I can still hear in my head to this day. Please, she's good at schmoozing. I'll give her that. But let's be real, she's not doing anything special. Some people just know how to play the game. I stood there frozen, my hand on the door frame, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. This was David, the same David who'd watched me pull all-nighters, who'd seen me redo presentations 7, 8 times until they were perfect, who'd witnessed me handle impossible clients with grace and persistence. He knew exactly how hard I worked because he'd been there, but he chose to call it luck. He chose to diminish everything I'd accomplished because what? Because I succeeded and he hadn't. Because acknowledging my hard work would mean acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't worked quite as hard. I wanted to walk in there. I wanted to list every single thing I'd done, every sacrifice I'd made, every skill I'd developed. I wanted to make him see the truth that was right in front of his face. But then something shifted in me, a clarity I'd never felt before. I realized that David didn't actually care about the truth. He cared about protecting his ego. Admitting that I'd earned my success would mean confronting his own choices, his own results. And he wasn't willing to do that. So he created a story where my success was just random chance, just good timing, just anything other than what it actually was. My hard work, my talent, my dedication. And here's what hit me. I could spend the rest of my career trying to make David see me, trying to prove myself to him, trying to earn his respect. But people who are determined not to see your worth will find 1,000 ways to explain it away. They'll call it luck. They'll call it connections. They'll call it anything except what it is. Your effort, your talent, your dedication. So I didn't walk into that break room. I didn't confront him. I simply walked away and kept doing my job with excellence, because my value wasn't determined by whether David could see it. My value was determined by the work itself, by the clients I served, by the team I led, by the integrity I brought to everything I did. David's respect. I didn't need it anymore. And that realization that I could be completely okay without it, that was freedom. But the lesson wasn't over yet, because life had another teacher waiting for me. Her name was Patricia Whitmore, and I'd considered her one of my closest friends for almost 20 years. We met through a book club in 2005, and we just clicked, or at least I thought we did. We'd meet for coffee every week, talk about everything, work, family, life, dreams. I trusted her with parts of myself I didn't share with many people. Patricia came from money, old money, the kind that meant she'd never worried about making rent or choosing between fixing the car and buying groceries. Her father owned a successful real estate development company, and she'd inherited a considerable trust fund when she turned 30. She worked, but she didn't have to. I respected that she chose to work anyway. I, on the other hand, came from the opposite background. Every dollar I had, I'd earned. I'd put myself through college working 2 jobs. I'd saved for years to buy my modest house in a decent neighborhood. I was careful with money, not because I was cheap, but because I understood its value. I understood that financial security meant freedom, meant options, meant being able to help my aging parents when they needed me. For years, I thought Patricia understood that. I thought she respected my choices. But looking back now, I can see all the little moments that should have told me the truth. Like when we'd go out to dinner, and I'd suggest a reasonably priced restaurant, she'd say, "Oh, Maggie, come on, it's just money. Let's go somewhere nicer." As if wanting to stick to my budget was somehow depriving myself rather than being responsible. Or when I talk about saving for retirement, maxing out my 401k, she'd laugh and say, "Oh, you're always worrying about tomorrow. You need to live more in the present," as if planning for the future was the same as not enjoying today. But the moment that really opened my eyes came last year. We were having coffee, and I was excited to share that I'd finally saved enough for a down payment on a small vacation property, something I'd been working toward for 5 years. It wasn't anything fancy, just a little cabin in the Poconos that I could eventually retire to. I was so proud of myself. Patricia listened, smiled, and then said, "That's sweet, Maggie. I'm glad you're finally able to do that. It must feel good to achieve something you've been scrimping and saving for all these years." Then she complained about her current job, saying they didn't respect her, even though she was often late to work. She was dissatisfied with her boss. She thought the organization was lucky to have her because her family was so wealthy. And ultimately, she thought being friends with me was something that elevated her even more, when I was truly the symbol of inferiority. And then she added, "You know, if you'd asked, my dad knows some great investment people. You probably could have gotten there faster with better returns. But I guess everyone has to do things their own way." I smiled politely and changed the subject. But inside, something broke. Or maybe something finally became clear. Patricia had never respected my financial choices. She'd never seen my careful planning as wisdom or discipline. She'd always seen it as evidence of lack. Lack of money, lack of confidence, lack of the privilege she'd been born into. And worse, she'd always made me feel like I should be grateful that she, from her position of wealth, still chose to be friends with someone like me. The truth was, Patricia had confused her circumstances with her capabilities. She used money to buy regard and used money to measure her respect for others. But you know what? I built everything I had, every single thing. My career, my home, my security, my future. I built it with my own hands, my own mind, my own determination. And there was absolutely no shame in that. In fact, there was dignity in it. There was strength in it. So here I am at 56, and I've learned some people will never respect you. Not because you haven't earned it. You have. Not because you're not worthy. You are. But because respecting you would require them to confront something uncomfortable in themselves. David would have to admit that his career stalled because of his choices, not because I got lucky. Patricia would have to admit that wealth without wisdom is just numbers in an account, and that true security comes from discipline, not inheritance. But here's what you need to do, what I finally learned. Stop trying to earn respect from people who've already decided not to give it. Stop explaining yourself to people who've already made up their minds. Stop seeking validation from people who need to invalidate you to feel better about themselves. Your worth is not up for debate. Your hard work is not up for reinterpretation. Your choices are not inferior just because they're different. Walk away with your dignity intact. Keep doing excellent work, not to prove anything to anyone, but because that's who you are. Keep making wise choices, not because others approve, but because you know they're right for you. And most importantly, invest your energy in people who already see your value, because they're out there. They're the ones who celebrate your wins instead of explaining them away. They're the ones who respect your choices even when they're different from their own. Respect from the right people is everything. Respect from the wrong people is worthless. Choose wisely where you seek your validation. And remember, the most important respect you'll ever receive is the respect you give yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, I hope it gives you permission to stop fighting for respect from people who will never give it.
And start honoring the incredible person you already are.